Thank you, Chairman. As I said in the initial remarks, I'm a member of Reid County Council, an elected member, and this whole project has been very active in Westmeath over the last 2 months. We've had 8 large community groups meeting who are very worried about this project for the Midlands. I just want to say I'm a semi-retired veterinary practitioner, and it's been my honour to work in the farming community for over 40 years. And I can say without contradiction, the most united community in this country is the farming community, who assist one another. And I want to say to Mr. Bergen, unfortunately, this will divide the farming community. And I have no doubt about that, which is extremely worrying. I know that the short-term thing for the selected farmers who are selected, because I understand Mainstream and Element will build largely on farmland, not on cutaway bogs, because it's more economical. And I understand that they're paying them 18,000, 20,000 a year and so on. But I've information that UK landowners got 40,000 sterling for the thing. So I'm worried about this in the long term. Thank you.
So do you have a specific question, or do you have a specific question?
Well, I'd just like to know what Mr. Bergen and his farming colleagues and thing, what research they've done. Or does he accept what I'm saying, that in my view it will be divisive? Because if I put up a wind farm on my farm, my neighbour doesn't want it. Okay. I know that, because it'll affect his whole housing planning. Because they're so large, they're the highest in Europe.
Very good, thank you.
Through the Chair, in terms of the IFA policy and any infrastructure development, it's very, very clear. We assist farmers who are approached in infrastructure developments, whatever they are. I've been involved, I chaired a roads committee with an IFA. I've been involved in negotiations with the NRA on roads, on rail, on gas, and air grid infrastructure. And they're all compulsory. And we have a clear view that we're pro-development and that we will assist farmers who are approached in any way by infrastructure development companies to get the best possible terms and conditions. There's a planning process there, and you as a councillor I know are well aware of it, where any issues that people have, and we're strongly in favour of a robust and strong planning process here to deal with this issue, because it's bigger in scale, as you rightly say, than anything that's ever been come heretofore. But that's not the responsibility of the IFA. We're not the planners. We're neither the proposers of the development, nor are we the opposers of the development. There are people well paid, well resourced to deal with the merits and demerits of these projects. Our job is to look after the farmers that are approached. In terms of neighbouring farmers, and I've spoken to a lot of farmers about this, we have ensured that their legal and wind rights are protected, that there can be no encroachment on their boundary ditches if they do not want to participate. That's as far as we can go. There's a legal requirement there of 2 diameter rotor length from a neighbour's boundary ditch. That's in all the agreements, so that at least the wind rights that are above your head and that belong to you, and we've established that they belong to you, remain with yours, are not interfered with. Also, your right to object is in no way compromised by the IFA agreement, and in fact, any of the agreements we have, if you fall out of the process at an early stage for environmental or whatever reasons, the legal requirements must be adhered to in terms of 2D, and your right to object remains. So that's what we can do, and it's up to the planning process and the people that are in that now to decide on the merits or the demerits. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
And I appreciate Mr. Bergen's reply. I wonder at any stage of this meeting, will there be any discussion on alternative ways of producing wind energy? Or is it solely on wind, this conference? Because obviously, as an elected politician and a citizen, I fully support the government idea of exporting and creating jobs and so on. But there are other ways in this country of producing energy which might be more effective than wind energy. Will we have any opportunity to discuss that at this meeting today?
No, it's not the purpose of the meeting today. We have another question. Thank you.
My name is John Kopp from Advanced Tower Systems. We're a company from the Netherlands. What we are doing, we are building hybrid towers in mainly Germany and Scandinavia. Towers combined from concrete and steel. The hub heights are of 140 and 150 meters. So really high towers, and the idea of that is that it's being produced locally, but it also unlocks areas where you don't have sufficient wind speeds available. The question now is, in many countries like the UK and Ireland, there is a limitation on 100 meters hub height. Would you think that down here in the county Offaly for the future, because with these towers, by going up, you could get, let's say, 30 to 40% more energy yield with the same turbine, with the same blades, but it would need permissions to go up to 150 meters hub heights and 200 meters tip heights. Would that be something for the future which could be discussed over here?
I think that's a question for the planner.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. Well, just to say that at the moment, any applications we have had in, each of them were assessed on their own merits, obviously, in accordance with the policy of the development plan. And there are one or two where the height of the turbines was higher than the existing permissions that we have granted. And we have asked the developers to go back and to make the case why they need to increase the height of these particular turbines. It was mentioned this morning as well that there is a review of the guidelines in relation to wind farm development taking place at the moment by the Department of the Environment. And it may well be that they will impose some height restrictions on turbines. But until we see those revised guidelines, I'm not in a position to guess one way or the other. But at the moment, if a planning application comes to us and we consider that the height, for whatever reason, is excessive, we certainly will ask the applicant to revise it and to make a very good case why the increased height should be allowed.
Thank you, Declan. Any more questions? Yes, here.
I'm not a constitutional lawyer, but my understanding is that the state retains the wind as an energy resource in the Constitution. And I've heard Mr. Rabbit make that point in relation to this project also, because I think he expects to see a royalty to the state at some stage flowing from this project. Second thing, just in relation to the IFA's involvement in relation to the project, and I think it's a very positive thing at one level. But as a developer, I would like to make the point that not all projects are the same. Projects can be very marginal in some instances, and they can be good projects in another instance. And very often, to have a baseline in relation to what the minimum return will be can disallow a project because it just won't make the cut. So I would suggest that that's taken into consideration in terms of looking at projects. I can understand with a project of this scale that well may be able to hold that, particularly if it's being exported into a different jurisdiction. But I know with a lot of other projects, if you're hitting 5% as a minimum, the project wouldn't be viable. So I would suggest that that be taken into account also.
Chairman, I won't start negotiating with you across the floor as a developer at the moment, but I'll make a couple of comments. In the domestic development, wind development market, we've had no engagement from developers with IFA prior to the arrangement with Mainstream of any substance. So you welcome IFA's engagement. I'd welcome engagement from the domestic industry with IFA as a representative group of farmers if they so choose. It works both ways. In terms of the wind rights and the state owning a piece of them, and I'm sure you're dead right, they'll be looking for their piece. I'm not a constitutional lawyer either, I'm a farmer. But I'm very clear that any infrastructure on farms has to be paid for, is being paid for in this scenario, and I presume they wouldn't be negotiating with us unless we had some constitutional rights as well. And in terms of the projects and the difference of the projects and all the rest of it, I see wind farming exactly the same as I see any other type of farming. What we do in the association is try and inform our members, lobby as hard as we can for the best possible price, best possible income, whether it's milk, beef, grain, whatever, and wind should be no different. And we're not afraid to set high standards and high targets for the industry to reach as a fair and reasonable return for farmers, and we're very happy to negotiate with you at any time in any development in the future, and wish you well with it. Thank you.
Okay. Any more questions? One down here. Thank you.
Thanks, Chairman. Councillor Colin Arthur, Fine Gael Councillor, Westmeath County Council. I'm a near neighbour, and just you mentioned Dairy Green earlier. I live just across the field from Dairy Green workshop. I want to commend Mainstream for today's conference and putting the information to people here. I just, if I could, Chairman, to remind people that there's lots of facilities in Westmeath. We have, in Rochford Bridge are 16 hectares of land which is set aside for industrial development, and it's owned, and we have sewerage and all lined up for that. So, and despite what some politicians over my neck of the woods might be saying or might be getting coverage for, there's a very positive disposal towards wind farming in Westmeath. And certainly, you can look me up, anybody here who wants to develop a business based from the Westmeath side, I'll certainly work with them. And I'm quite sure I want to commend Offaly County Council and Pat Gallagher's contribution this morning, and your own here now, that it's great to see the council getting involved in this, and it certainly is what might just turn our economy around, and we should give every chance, and I certainly am prepared to do so. Just I want to ask a question of any of the panel, and maybe Tom might know, is there any overall sort of a plan being set out there to people who may want to come to Westmeath or come to Offaly or to Laois to make the wind turbines and make the blades or make something, or as one of the speakers said, some of the small little sheds or some of these things? Is there a framework where we can combine all the councils and outline all the available areas where construction of these things can take place? What's the availability of storage units? What's the availability of rental units that are there lying empty all over the place, which could be available at a low rate to get things going? So just I think it's worthwhile getting a joined up thinking with all the counties and all the councils to put together a map of where all these facilities are, so that investors coming in know where they can go and get access to these facilities. And I welcome the conference.
Thank you very much for your question. So the question is there a strategy and a plan in place to actually market what's available to potential investors?
Well, I think obviously the result of today, I think when the potential is realised around the place, and in terms of the strengths that we have, I know that we have two precast companies in the vicinity in Banagher and Murta that are world class and are exporting their product all over the world. Murta is building the Crossrail tunnel. Banagher built the Dublin Port tunnel. So in terms of the capacity they have to work locally, it's massive. And I think all of that potential will be realised. I know within the Construction Industry Federation, the civil engineering group are here today, and the mechanical and electrical group are here to liaise with all the players and to see how we can unite together, because I think there's so many issues have to be pulled together here. And there's so much need for certainty. Everybody, I know the two companies have invested massively, and Offaly County Council have invested massively in the plan. And, as more people come on board, everybody obviously wants to invest because there will be a future and return in it. But I think in terms of bringing the whole government together and an appreciation of how absolutely important this is nationally, and have everybody pulling together in terms of the jobs. And just to reiterate a comment, I had a previous history in IFA, and in my time as president, the motorway projects were being planned. And there was massive opposition from farmers along every route, mainly because there was a lack of consultation initially. There was a secrecy about preferred routes and so on. Guys were going in and sort of pushing their weight around. And eventually it meant that nobody from the NRA or from any of the consultancy groups could enter a farm until there was an agreement signed up. And I think generally in the end, farmers are extremely happy. Some people would have said they got overcompensated in the end, but they were extremely happy with the deal they got. And I think there's general widespread approval now that the network of motorways we have was well worth doing. So, you won't make an omelette without cracking some eggs. And I would hope that the lessons, that have been learned from the Corrib and from the motorway projects and all of those will join together. That, and I recognise a lot of the people outside. I've dealt with them previously and I know them. And they're decent, honourable people who generally, most of them, hold the views very strongly. And I think that sort of conversation has to take place, and they have to be respected in their views. You won't swing them all. But I think by being very open and by explaining the whole situation, this is a fabulous project. There's no need to be secretive about it. It has massive potential for everybody. And I think the people that have concerns, every effort should be made to bring them and to assuage the worries to have.
Thank you, Tom. Dominic?
Yeah, I think this is the second conference around the sub-supply opportunities that has been held in the Midlands. And I think that the very fact that you asked the question means that this conference has done its business and that it has stimulated, your views, your ideas in relation to the sub-supply opportunities in Westmeath. And yes, those supplies will exist. They're very well made by all the speakers here this morning. And maybe there is an idea around having a Midland database that would support the procurement that was referred to here today, that for those small manufacturers are able to get onto that conveyor belt and tap into the opportunities. The very ones that are not here today, and there's many of them out there still. So I can see more of these conferences happening. I think the word is going to get out. There are real sub-supply opportunities out there. Before the first conference was held, people just thought there were just going to be wind turbines, and these were going to come from Germany or wherever. There's, as you know from today, there's lots of other opportunities.
Okay, thank you, Dominic. Kieran.
Thanks very much, Chairman.
Just name Kieran and...
Kieran Keenahan, and I'm with Banner Concrete. I think it was mentioned by Owen Joy and a question earlier on about the work in manufacturing steel towers and coating them. But it would almost have to be a certainty that these towers would be made in concrete, because the capacity is here locally, the technical capacity, and certainly the production capacity is here. Like in our plant, and I know, as Tom said about mortars, we would have a multiple of the capacity that would be found in the UK. And there wouldn't be any plant, I don't believe, with the capacity we would have in Europe. And this arose as a result of the program that there was here for motorway construction. But the sort of products that are involved in motorway construction are not dissimilar to what is used in wind towers because of their big weights, and it's labor intensive, heavily reinforced concrete sections. But the technical involvement would be in no way more difficult. So, but I think and I'm not sure how we get around this, it's the procurement of the components, particularly from the towers and the turbine blades, that generally these come as part of a package. Now, I'm not sure what can be done politically and locally, but certainly in plants like our own, or mortars indeed, we're less than half hour probably from the centre of the activity. Now, what sense would it make hauling product from across Europe? But this can happen because of just the difficulty. I mean, I think we could satisfy anybody in our plant, as I'm sure can others, that we have that capacity. I don't believe we would have any difficulty meeting to be economical, to compete. It's just the way the procurement goes together. Now, if this thing is a sustainable energy, so if there is a focus on the energy required in haulage across the seas and the land, if there's a value put on that, then it may give or add to the argument. And the other side of this, of course, is that it is a very labour-intensive sort of activity, manufacturing the concrete, as is indeed with the steel before this sort of complicated. So I believe it would be a big help to promoting this project to all of those who may have question marks about it, that if certainly it was a serious consideration that the towers could be made locally. Now that's more of a statement, but I'd be just curious.
I'll turn it into a question for you.
Thanks very much, Paul.
So for Tom Parlin, who's an expert on procurement and selling, what can be done is the question to reshape how procurement is structured before it all starts, so that there's an opportunity that local people can actually start making bids for these projects. Because I think the point you're making is, because the procurement goes out seeking for a full structure in a particular way, it means that that's more likely to end up coming out of Germany or Switzerland or Holland, wherever it is. Whereas if you break it down into smaller bids, there's an opportunity perhaps. Okay.
Well,
so Tom, go with it.
Procurement rules and laws dictated by Europe largely now, particularly for big projects. And within the CIF, the government form of procurement and construction contracts has been reviewed at the moment. It's been delayed until our presidency is over. We had a major conference with both Irish and international speakers lately, identifying all the major consultants and so on, identifying the deficits and problems that are there. From a construction point of view, it put all of the risk upon the contractor, and it left them very exposed if they found something wrong. So there's certainly, I agree with Kieran, there is scope certainly in the light of this to modify procurement, but we are restricted fairly largely. Kieran wouldn't like anybody sort of raising the carbon footprint of him sending his massive beams over to the UK, so I'm sure it wouldn't work the other way around. But clearly the only reason he was able to send them over is because he was cheaper and given a better product. And likewise, it's strange that from the middle of or middle of Westmeath, we're building the tunnel, the Crossrail tunnel in London. And I know just last week I was in Diageo, where they're spending 200 million on the most modern, biggest brewery in the world to export 70% of its product all over the world. The guy said, the manager said, from a farming point of view, it was like building the bottling plant for the distribution of liquid milk on the Aran Islands. Because Ireland didn't fit the bill, but it can be done. And just in terms of logistics, they brought in some of the biggest containers ever handled ever in Europe into the port in Dunleary. They were brought through the city centre. They went through Stephen's Green the wrong way around. There was a team before them taking down all the traffic lights and a team behind them re-erecting them, and nobody even knew about them until they were standing up in Diageo. So there's massive capacity and ingenuity in this country already to do that sort of work, and I think it should be exploited to the full.
Okay. I think one final comment from Dominic before lunch. Thanks.
Yeah, just from a chamber perspective, a point very well made by Kieran. And in our view, Kieran, it makes absolute no sense whatsoever if there are real alternatives available. But I think it's incumbent on your company and the other companies that are in the Midlands to make the procurers aware of what is available locally. And I don't know how we go about that, but that's something, and it's a job that needs to be done. But they can't make decisions around products that are available here if they're not aware of them.
Okay.